There's a tendency these days to just think of using the cloud as being using something like Amazon, but it's a much deeper issue than that. It's actually looking at which layers in the stack you will use. We think the first exercise people need to make is this thing core to me or not? And if it's core, I probably need to push it down the stack, perhaps to Amazon where I have complete control, but also complete responsibility. Whereas if it's something that's like email, we should probably push it up the stack and not invest so much attention to it. This report, Doing Business in the Cloud, seeks to look at concrete business issues of cost, agility, and collaboration. There's been a great deal of discussion in the trade press about where the real cost advantage of the cloud is. We want to seek to actually nail that down and make sure that people understand that things like the ability of the cloud to be turned on and off are the source of the value, and the ability to move things up the stack are some of the additional sources of value. Just simply moving to the cloud doesn't necessarily gain anything. Learning how to do things different will help us. One of the things we track very closely are notions of core and context, so that as you think about it, what's core to your business is what causes people to buy from you instead of somebody else. And so you have to ask yourself when you're looking at, say, your email, is email something that the way we do it is so distinctive that it causes people to buy from us? In that case, we actually need it to have tight control, and we want to push it down in the cloud stack. We want to have actual control over the security and perhaps the user interface. However, if email is not key to our profitability, to our ability to gain new customers, then it should be up in the stack. We think that the biggest thing that customers can do is take advantage of this report to sort through their portfolio and see what belongs at which level before asking questions that would actually lead you astray. One of the things we have to explain and understand is why there is so much Sturm und Drang about the cloud, so many different opinions, so many different issues of the definition, and a real quest for some kind of canonical simple definition. We think the reason for this complexity and the reason for this confusion is simply that what you see in the cloud depends on where you stand. So for example, if you are a media company whose product is bits and who are lightly regulated, the cloud is a facility for doing all kinds of things almost immediately, such as the New York Times using it to reformat old TIFF files from its historical libraries into PDFs for people to access on the web. However, if you're an aerospace and defense company, your initial look at the cloud is to say, oh my gosh, I can't possibly use that because of security concerns. It's just not part of my business. And similarly, if you're an old line technology company and you look at the cloud, you say, oh my gosh, that's my business. As we've talked about in previous work, there's a real change in the technology of the cloud. And just as with the shift to mini computers, many of the current players are simply going to be gone. Their names like Wang and Data General and DEC, which were big companies, are now gone. So part of what you see in the Sturm und Drang is people positioning themselves for what they view as a fight for their lives. When you peel back what Amazon does, much of what it uses are relatively standard pieces of hardware and software. What's different is how they're organized, and most particularly what's different is the scale at which they are delivered. When we talk about clouds, there's now discussion of private clouds, of things that may use the same technology inside your own organization. However, we would think that this is not a true cloud in many ways, because what we would say a real cloud is something where the vendor can add easily 10,000 servers a month. See, this ties back to our earlier work on consumerization. That we now have organizations operating at scale that we've never seen before. For example, Yahoo email has north of 250 million email users. And at 250 million, you can't do certain things badly. You have to learn how to make things interoperable, stable, and reliable. So we think that the primary function of the new cloud is to operate at a scale that we've never seen before. Now, can individual firms take advantage of some of the cloud thinking? Sure, because in most data centers, utilization of servers is actually quite low. So using cloud technology inside actually can be quite helpful. But ultimately, it's going to be outside. It's going to be on these scale providers that we see most work get done. Can companies get value from the cloud today? The answer in looking at educational testing service in the US has to be yes. Educational testing service runs something called English as a Second Language test 40 times around the world. Historically, those servers that supported the speech recognition project as part of that had to actually sit idle for about 325 days. Now, instead of having servers sit idle, they have a few servers sitting in the data center that run the speech recognition program as the tests start up. And as they need additional capability, they simply add servers from Amazon. This allows them to deliver high performance at low cost. When we look at what IT organizations do, particularly in the data center, we can actually tease out 4 capabilities. There's production, development, test, and disaster recovery. While the cloud may not be appropriate for all 4 of those categories for every company today, it is absolutely appropriate for dev and test. For example, BP, the large oil company, spends rough numbers $500 million a year on SAP. One of the problems they've had is that as they do new generations of SAP processes, they have run out of dev and test machines. And so there's been this long queue of expensive consultants and staff members waiting to get their time on the development machine. Now, however, they actually spin that up in the cloud, and they can spin it up when and as they need it, so that they can then operate these teams in parallel and reduce overall business cycle time. When they come in the morning at 8 o'clock, they can turn it on, and at 5 o'clock when they leave, they can turn it off. Like the iPhone, the cloud is evolving very rapidly. And what was true a year ago is certainly not true today. In fact, what was true several weeks ago may not be true today. If you're going to be active in taking advantage of the cloud, you need to understand the timeline for development, you need to understand the most recent developments, and you need to hear directly from the people themselves where their products are and where they plan to go. We in this next study tour will actually see the big dogs in the cloud computing hunt, as well as a bunch of new and interesting upcoming companies that we think are going to be vital to understanding the future.